Hi, I'll pick up where I left off in the last video from the chapter on the Anschlag in Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach's Versuch über die wahre Art, das Klavier zu spielen. In Schubert's third impromptu in bar 14 I play an Anschlag. So there's a B flat, the second below beforehand, the C. The C with the upper mordant. The upper mordant is too slow, too laboured, and it doesn't serve the legato well. It's not about what one prefers or what one wants. It's about what is correct. Music is bigger than the composer or the style period. It's like with flight. It's not about what one prefers. Planes do not look like they do because people preferred them to look that way. They look like they do because they obey the principles of flight, the laws of nature. It's not about what you personally prefer. It's about what flies. And it's no different in music. The only difference is there isn't that foolproof test to tell, so that people can instantly tell the difference between music and notes and noise. The Roll of Honor all have rhythm, but they have no pulse. They all play the notes, but their notes don't have harmony. In the equivalent spot in Variation 2, I compromise and play the upper mordant with the C, but then I play the Anschlag with the F. The variation helps the shape of the phrase. I'm very particular about following the wishes of the composer, because I figure if I don't want to follow them, I can compose my own music. But composers can be incorrect. Chopin can be incorrect. It takes a literate person to spot where it's not easy to spot where a composer will be incorrect, but they can be incorrect. And it can happen to Schubert too, on occasion. And sometimes I will compromise and I might do it, if it occurs twice, I'll do it once my way and once his way. I do something similar in Liszt's reminiscence of Robert the Devil, his Valse Infernale, the opera by Meyerbeer. But I do it the other way round. The way the shake holds back the momentum was passable here when one considers a ritardando at the end of a section. Anschlag seems to have already been forgotten as early as Schubert and Liszt, as a result maybe of something similar to what Bach alludes to in paragraph 2 from the chapter on fingering. He talks about the nature of secrets. Da endlich der echte Gebrauch der Finger bishero so unbekannt gewesen und nach Art der Geheimnisse nur unter wenigen geblieben ist. The way of secrets. There is no ornament like the Anschlag for getting the upper hand on those who only know the shake. They won't be able to tell the difference, and they'll be forever trying to attain or match the easy speed you achieved with the Anschlag with their shakes. The longer they fail, the more their awe of you and your skills will grow. One can see the temptation in keeping it secret. So you can imagine Beethoven playing the Pathetique Sonata and playing the Anschlags with ease. And the public, the roll of honour, being clueless to the Anschlag, and they're playing their shakes and they think, my God, how did Beethoven do it? And it's an easy way for Beethoven to keep all those masses at bay, to keep a nice, comfortable distance from them. It's very tempting not to tell them about the Anschlag. And it shows the generosity of Bach. And how is such generosity met in the world? In the cage. The next point Bach made in paragraph 6 was that the Anschlag is more natural with figure 82b than the brace, which works better before an ascending second. Bach shows this in the example marked with an asterisk. The brace over the repeated C is followed by the ascending second, by the D. This is invaluable insight when it comes to figuring out what ornament to use where, when it comes to putting the correct ornament in its correct place. It also shows how an incorrect ornament can not only make that spot unplayable, but what comes after it too. An incorrect ornament is like when you put an incorrect piece of a jigsaw down, and what happens then is none of the you can't find any pieces to fit around it. And you'll have been trying, and what you'll have is a collection of pieces you figure should be going there, but don't. And then, you know, at some stage you figure out, hold on, that piece is actually wrong. You take it out and you find a piece that actually goes there. And all of a sudden, those pieces you had accumulated, they all suddenly fit all around it. An incorrect ornament has that same effect. It not only hinders you from being able to play that exact bit properly, but it also hinders you from being able to play what comes before and what comes after properly. That is why the Roll of Honor have such problems expressing the dynamics on a score. Certain places where they cannot do the dynamics, that is because, not the only reason, but some of it is their incorrect use of ornaments. Either the wrong ornament or the right ornament performed wrong. I could couple this with the appendix to the paragraph where Bach said the Anschlag can't be used before a note that is followed by an ascending second. That does not mean to say the brace can't be used with a note that is followed by a falling second. You know, as far as the other information was concerned. It's just the Anschlag is more natural. But the Anschlag can't be used before a note that is followed by an ascending second. This also would have been another opportunity for Bärenreiter to spot the error in the thinking behind their introduction. And you can see, I mean, Bärenreiter and G. Henley Verlag, they're both as bad as each other. They are in that Roll of Honor, that low Roll of Honor league. That's not to say G. Henley Verlag don't make attractive looking, you know, scores or whatever. They're pleasant to read and they look good. You just shouldn't listen to them when it comes to, you know, what they say, because their knowledge is half-baked. And as well, their scores, they call themselves an Urtext edition, but it's not, and I'll be addressing that in the future, future videos. They don't qualify as Urtext editions. And I can provide evidence, proof of that. Bach then says the Anschlag can indeed be used in slow tempos, in that it reduces the dissonance of an augmented second better than a brace. Das Versetzungszeichen bei dem Doppelschläger erkennt man, wie bei den Triller, aus dem Vorhergehenden, aus der Folge und aus der Modulation. Diese Manier leidet ebenso wenig wie die Triller in sich eine überflüssige Sekunde. Tab 4, Figur 30, D. A brace would introduce an E natural into the mix, adding more turbulence. Bach says the Anschlag reduces or mildens the dissonance better. He didn't say it eliminates the dissonance. The flat sign is not added to the E after the bar line, which could have one wondering, should the E of the Anschlag be flat or should it be natural? Bärenreiter added a flat sign. They obviously decided the E is indeed flat and might have thought it something Bach overlooked. I'm not saying they did think Bach overlooked it, but they might have thought he overlooked it. Bach did not overlook it. He does the same in figure 77 or in tab 4, figure 22D, or in the last example of tab 3, figure 6, or in the upcoming figure 87. There's just a few examples, they're not all of them. Consider paragraph 25. How do you know the accidental from aus dem vorhergehenden, what comes before, aus der Folge, from what follows, and aus der Modulation, so from what key one is in. What key is 84C in? It's in C minor. I am sure if the E was meant to have been natural, Bach would have added a natural sign. Otherwise, the accidental can be assumed. It is an economy of notation, a reduction of clutter. And the knowledge of that practice could help settle some contested incidences where it is not sure what note is to be played. You know, that knowledge could come in useful and it could serve as a point on the pro and con list in when trying to determine what the correct answer is. One uses it moreover before an ascending second and seventh. This is finishing off figure 82 by adding the missing leaps. So in figure 82 you had leaps of third, fourth, fifth and sixth. And Bach adds now here the second and the seventh to finish that off. It can be seen here how Bach will expect his reader to be able to feed themselves, to be able to process the information and interconnect it. So to see that he's doing that he's finishing off the previous one. He doesn't spoon feed. He presents the information on a plate, expecting the people to be able to feed themselves. That's why all this is lost on the roll of honour and their sucklings. Was it coincidence that 84C and 30D had the E flat and F sharp? Or was it deliberate because Bach thought of somebody who was cross-referencing? And when you look at 30D and see what he presented there, you can now know what extra Bach knew in that situation when he saw that E flat and then the F sharp with the brace. He knew more about that than he said at the time. And what more did he know about it? He knew that if he used an Anschlag there, he could milden the dissonance of that the step of an augmented second. 84D, figure 84D is the ascending second. Figure 84E is the seventh. And the Anschlag is used before an appoggiatura that precedes a falling second. What was that again? The roll of honour say about the reason for appoggiaturas in the classical repertoire? What they base their execution of Mozart's arpeggios on. As I speak, there could be some roll of honour professor right at this moment feeding a student that inane, unsubstantiated babble that can only come from the deprivation of the cage. The appoggiatura is there. It's just there so you don't ornament. So you don't ornament it. That's the only reason for them in the music. That's what they'll be told. And the thing is, that professor telling the student, that professor is just repeating mindlessly what they were told. And that student will turn into the professor who mindlessly repeats that to the next generation. And all those generations, none have a clue that what they're saying is completely unsubstantiated and completely unsatisfactory and ridiculous. Because it's a culture of spoon feeding. And then there's Bach's last point. The Anschlag works better when the melody falls than when it rises. Beethoven indicates an Anschlag in bar 6 of the second movement of his sonata Das Lebewohl, Lay Adieu. And the second movement is called Abwesenheit or absence. L'absence. There the melody falls, goes from E flat to D. From what we've learned from Bach thus far, we now know how it is to be expressed. We can see the unwritten piano and forte. We can thus understand that it adds a weight. It is another example of how the Anschlag can also be used in slow tempos. It is as well proof that Beethoven used the Anschlag. That piece is a masterpiece, and it has won the Roll of Honour completely butcher. As is so often the case, there can be conditions that allow for an exception. One Bach thought of is the repeat of the note that is decorated with the Anschlag in a slow tempo. In figure 84G, the repeated C in Adagio leaps a third to the E. So, there are some examples of where the Anschlag will be used and how frequent and how useful it is in the repertoire. And ornamentation transcends, like I said, it's the trinity. It's one of the trinity of piano playing. It transcends eras, style periods. And an incorrect ornament will always be an incorrect ornament. It's like a plane that doesn't fly will always be a plane that doesn't fly. So this will have a huge impact on your practice, on your piano playing, on the success at which you play the pieces. It'll have a huge impact on your expression, your confidence. It's a great ornament. So I know the next paragraphs will be dealing with the dotted Anschlag. So it'd be great if you were to join me with them. So thanks. Bye.